Greetings, everybody. We are in Orlando at the ARC Forum and talking to Michael Martinez of Foxborough Schneider Electric. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you.
So, open automation is a term that's often misunderstood, confused with a lot of definitions. Maybe let's start with that. What is it?
So open automation for me means the ability for end users to be able to use automation technology at the speed of innovation, so as quickly as manufacturers can come up with it, outside of the boundaries of our historically proprietary systems. Simple integration, known data sets, known data formats, known information models that allow customers to, we use this term a lot, plug and play, or plug and produce. But I think really that's the end vision, is to say, that person over there, that vendor over there has come up with a better way to solve my problem. I want to be able to leverage that capability in my plant as soon as possible without having to wait on a vendor to manufacture a product to incorporate it. So open is about time to market for our customers. How quickly can they take advantage of technology and start creating value for their customers as well?
Now, when I was practitioner, I always been on an open side.
Okay.
And PC-based control software, they got acquired by Schneider Electric. Later with a SCADA product from Invensys Wonderware that later became part of Schneider Electric.
Okay.
So I've always enjoyed doing that. But many companies are, for whatever reason, they are locked in proprietary ecosystem that have limited flexibility. What are some of the practical steps that businesses can take to transition from this system to open without disrupting their particular operation?
So I'll kind of step back, so if I think about OPAFs, the Open Process Automation Forum, so one of the ways that they've actually helped, so they've kind of helped us to set this path of how technology can share information in a common way so you can get to that plug and produce kind of a model. But what it's also given us the capability to do is they have what they call an OPAF communication, or OCI, right? So
okay.
OPAF communication interface, which means if we can agree on the language, agree on the format, agree on the protocols, that I can actually take a legacy system and communicate with a future-based open process automation standard-based system. What this also means specifically for Schneider Electric is that as we start to move forward in doing things with what we call like containers and virtualized controllers, is that we need to be able to add some value to those customers who have been with us all along from a Foxborough perspective. So we're working on ways to be able to integrate these open technologies into the existing systems to be able to provide a digital accessory, right? To be able to provide some value add to those customers and create pathways that allow, as I mentioned before in that OPAF information model context, the ability for legacy systems to communicate directly, so to be able to connect to, and then as software allows for them to actually be able to coexist. So all that to say is that there is no reason to wait until it's time to do a rip and replace or to migrate your system or to transition your system to something different. You can actually start to take advantage of these types of technologies today because most of it is software defined.
Right.
Meaning that as long as I have sufficient compute capacity and I have most customers will say, I have a business justification to add, whether it's machine learning or interacting even with business systems, as long as I have that business need to solve a problem, I would say to end users, look at open automation technologies to be able to fill that gap, to be able to put that seed in your facility that you can then grow into an open system as legacy systems, as they are proprietary and primarily hardware-based. As that hardware starts to go through its life cycle and it becomes necessary to address, the risk associated with an obsolete piece of hardware, you've already got that seed, and now that system can grow from that kernel that you put in today.
Thank you. And I just want to do a quick parenthesis. You mentioned OPAF.
Yeah.
There's Open Automation Association. Any relationship in the two? I know Schneider is supporting the Open Automation Association.
So there's universalautomation.org, right?
Okay.
So the way that all of these things fit together, and it's actually quite interesting. So you have OPAF. So OPAF is an end user originated, and then along with vendors and now systems integrators, partners. But the idea was that how do we get away from the challenges we have based on hardware obsolescence as they've made these proprietary investments over many years? How do we make sure that we don't have to rip and replace, and not only rip and replace, but all of the engineering and hours required when you went from one proprietary system to another, I had to recode all of my algorithms. I had to rebuild all of my graphics. I had to basically build a system from new to do exactly what the system previously was doing. So basically it was a tax to continue to operate, right? So OPAF says, how can we create standards so that as one particular piece of hardware or device within our system starts to age and we need to replace it, that we can do that over time without having to face this cliff event of having to drop off of the edge. And so they set forth the standards of how these different components, the control engines, the I/O engines, the network, what those interfaces look like. But by defining that specification, that was not the technology. That was just letting us know what needed to be done. It basically was the problem statement. Organizations like universalautomation.org provide a runtime or a technology that allows you to now create an OPAS or OPAP aligned system. So there's that technology layer that allows that specification to become real. And we've seen that here at the ARC conference. Just stepped out of a session with Exxon where they leveraged Automation Expert and the Universal Automation Runtime to start to say, now we have deployed, they claim, first OPAF, in a production system using Universal Automation Runtime and EcoStruxure Automation Expert.
Thank you for that explanation. Now, talk a little bit more about maybe how open system enable companies to align financial success with ethical practice, sustainability, and long-term innovation.
So this is interesting because I think prior to me being part of our DCS system, there was another gentleman here before me. And one of the things that we used to say was that the DCS was the profit engine, right? Meaning that if we had the right algorithms, if we could tune the system properly, that we could actually get the system to drive the profitability of our company. I think as technology has grown, as our compute capacity has grown, as we've seen advances in machine learning and artificial intelligence, we recognize that we can do multiple things at once, right? So why stop at profitability? Can we not put other success criteria on top of that and allow the control strategies to actually drive that? So there is the automation side of sustainability, so we can start to talk about how do we combine real-time information about our energy management systems to be able to make the best use of our energy and the rest of our process resources? But we can also start to talk about now in these open systems, how can I start to drive at some of my supply chain cost? So when you break down that proprietary barrier of systems and you say, well, I don't no longer have to buy hardware from a system that has to be shipped across the ocean. Can I procure something locally that meets my compute needs, that meets my process and environment requirements, and still run the control strategies and algorithms that I need to run my process, but without employing that additional cost of transporting stuff across the seas, or even, most recent supply chain challenges, I just can't get it. And it's limiting me, and maybe in some cases putting my process in an unsafe situation because I can't get a spare part, or I can't add this new process. So I think there are many ways, both from a software-defined perspective, but also from an open perspective, that now are going to allow us to not only hit our profitability goals, because as companies we have to be profitable, but also to say, but we'd also like to have a lighter footprint on the environment, or we would also like to support local economies. I think all of these things become possible now with some of the things that we're doing now with open and software-defined automation.
Yeah, so thanks for the insights within this use case of supply chain. That makes it a little more tangible for me to understand anyways. So what about a collaboration between human and machine? How do you see the role of humans evolving in open automation and AI systems that become more prevalent?
No, this is a great question, because I think there's this big concern, especially when we start talking about artificial intelligence, and we've all seen the sci-fi movies where the robots take over the world and the machines make the mistakes and they decide humans are unnecessary, right? I think that's hopefully lives in the world of science fiction. I don't think that's a reality. I think what we're seeing today is because we have so many digital systems, which I think is good, that gives us data which we can act on, but now this overwhelming amount of information becomes very difficult for a human being to process. Not only that, we don't have the capability in our own minds to be able to look at patterns and to see maybe connections or correlations that a computer can do very quickly. And so I think as we start to think about how do we incorporate artificial intelligence into process control systems, I think we start with the simple things like the large language models and all of the volumes and volumes of user manuals and documentation that you have to go through to understand how to make a simple change in your system. We can use large language models and artificial intelligence to be able to use normal human language to ask questions or to prompt the AI and get a summary of the response that we're looking for without having to go through those reams and reams. Or even with a simple search engine, it's difficult to think, okay, I can't remember the keyword that I need to search. So I think that is where we will start, but I don't think that's where we finish. I think that beyond that, we start to look at now some of our high fidelity simulation and how we can point machine learning algorithms towards those simulators so that we can start to think about optimizing processes. We can start to think about, I used to joke that, when I first got into automation, I come in as a physicist, right? So I love data. And so I kept thinking, well, if we could just put analyzers on everything and measure everything, a machine, we could look at that and we could find correlations between our raw materials, our processing, and our final product and the product quality and throughput that we're looking for. And wouldn't it be amazing if we realized that after we did all of that there were really only 3 key things that we needed to measure to actually make this process controllable with high quality outputs that would meet our customers' requirements. But we've instrumented these things and we put so much additional cost. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there for us to be able to re-examine how we think we understand things and maybe even question some of the basics that we believe we understand about our own processes and about our own manufacturing strategies where we can actually learn. And I think that is where we start to supplement the capacity of the human brain with AI that may help us to ask new questions and to find new, better, maybe safer, more sustainable ways to address some of the challenges that a lot of the products that these end user manufacturers make, how we can do that better.
Yeah, exciting times ahead, whether as a physicist or as an engineer.
Absolutely. I hope physics changes, by the way. I doubt it. I think Newton kind of had it down. But
Now, looking ahead, what excites you the most about the potential of this open automation and to reshape the industry over the next decade, particularly in terms of sustainability, innovation, and responsible business practices?
So I want to give you an example. So there's a company that Schneider Electric has worked with called Eco Data Center, right there in Sweden. So this is where I believe the future is. So today when we start talking about optimization or how we leverage intelligence, we're generally drawing a box around that process. One of the things that Eco Data Center is actually doing is they've found that their inputs and their outputs, so their raw materials and their finished products, those are also inputs to another process or coming as outputs from another process. And so they've actually, as part of their sustainability initiative, said, well, is there some way that we can use our waste product to be a feedstock for energy production? So some of the waste product coming out actually goes into the production of biofuels that then used to create the energy that they consume as a data center. So you get this circular economy that goes outside of the boundaries of one company. And I think for me, that's what's more exciting. It's yes, we want to optimize what's happening in the box, but it's kind of like what's happening with open automation. We had these pillars up around the different, large manufacturers of control systems, but we find that the efficiencies and the opportunities are actually when we take those walls down. And I think, yes, that happens for us as automation vendors between, as I say, the major manufacturers and adopting these open automation concepts. But I think that beyond that, now more into the responsible profitability realm, how do our consumers of automation technology, so the end users, the manufacturers, start to bring those boundaries down and thinking about open manufacturing and open refining, and what does that mean, and how do we make better use? There again, from a Schneider Electric perspective, it's about making sure that we're leveraging the most of our energy and our resources. How do we do that across even company boundaries beyond automation? I think automation is the first step, but I think for me, it's more exciting to think about how do we treat our economies as open systems.
Thank you, Michael, for sharing your insights. And if you're in the audience, have questions for Michael, feel free to leverage the hashtag you see there. And we'll make sure we chase Michael to answer them. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.